he's also a Jewish Messiah as well as Messiah for all. And he was so Jewish. In fact, there are some verses where he says, "I've been sent for the lost sheep of Israel. I've been sent for the people of Israel, children of Israel, rather than I cannot give anything to the dogs and the Gentiles." And he would say that, and that was a very pharisaical thing to say. Although he was saying that to pretty much invoke the faith that was already in this person's. I think it was a Gentile widow who had a sick daughter. That's kind of the story. But there are instances in Scripture that make it seem like some verses that seem like Jesus was trained in the Pharisaical tradition. But whether that's true or not, but we know that his wisdom was beyond his years. Even we believe that his wisdom was otherworldly. It was not of this world. He was called Wonderful Counselor, meaning that not that he was trained in counseling, but he was that title went to a kingly, to a wise king. So he was kingly already, even from birth. Although he had humble origins, his idea and wisdom, knowledge, intellect was beyond not only the people of his day or even the scholars of his day, but his wisdom surpassed all. This verse pretty much sums up that he was from the beginning. So let me read 1 John verse 1 to 1:1. That which was from the beginning, that which we have heard, that which we have seen with our eyes, that which we beheld and our hands handled concerning the word of life. Verse 2, the life was made manifest and we have seen it. We testified to it. We proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and was made manifest to us. So this idea of Jesus having been manifested to them, having been proclaimed to them, the apostles, disciples, they saw Jesus with their own eyes. They witnessed the one who was from the beginning. He was with the Father from the beginning. All creation was made for him and by him, right? This is what verse 3 says. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you may also have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. I'm going to read from 1 to 4, verse all of it, from the beginning. That which is from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, we have seen, tasted, and heard, we have felt, touched, all the senses. Jesus was there for us. Teacher, Messiah, Christ from heaven, came on earth, and we have experienced and touched it. This we proclaim concerning the word of life. The life appeared, we have seen it and testified to it, and we proclaim to you the eternal life who is with the Father and has appeared to us. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you also may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. We write this to you, make our joy complete. So, Jesus was the teacher that told us, that told the people of God, whom he has already chosen before time to be his people, his real people. We are his people if we believe that Jesus Christ has been sent by God and he is God's only Son, and there is life with the Son. If the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. There is freedom within the Son. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, Lord Jesus Christ is, there is freedom. We were slaves of sin. Everyone who has sinned is a slave of sin. But everyone who has been saved by Jesus, we were slaves. Now we are slaves of righteousness. We are now servants of Jesus Christ, bond servants, Paul calls it. We have been separated by Jesus because we're so thankful, because we are gratitude, because our life is owned by Jesus, because he bought us with a price. Because with that freedom, we willingly lay down our freedom for Christ. We have become a bondservant. And that is the life that Jesus has shown us. Jesus was not just a great teacher, he was God, but he was still known by a lot of people. When they say Jesus, they love Jesus. All people love Jesus. It's Christians that they get turned off by. Jesus is loved, meaning that he was a great teacher. He was a great educator because he not only taught, but he lived out his teaching. Very simple, he lived out his teaching. So as a teacher, as an educator, it's really hard because you have to live out your teaching. The audience and the people who hear you are gonna listen and keep you accountable more than you know. So whether if you're going into preaching, whether if you're going to pastoring, whether if you're going to education field, right, after Lordland University, and if you encounter these teachings, and you have to know that Bible speaks sternly about teachers. The Bible says, do not strive. I think Apostle Paul, he exhorts in one of his letters, saying that do not strive to be teachers because there is a higher standard of judgment for the teachers. And there are verses that are very scary. If you let one of these little ones fall, it's better for the teacher who taught that false teaching or incorrect teaching, or have led this person astray, who is under him astray. The Bible tells us it's better for that man to hang a very heavy weight across their neck. I'm very paraphrasing a lot right now. They chain themselves to the neck and then just throw themselves in the waters and die. So the Bible speaks very sternly about educators, teachers, and those who are above leaders, basically. So teachers very responsible. So Christ was the educated teacher, and everyone loves Christ, Jesus Christ, and it's the Christians that that a lot of people get turned off by. So Jesus was a very effective teacher because he lived out his teaching, and a lot of people saw that and was changed. And Jesus' disciples were the ones who testified to Jesus' veracity, authenticity, and truthfulness, and they paid that with their lives. In persecution, one or two might die for what they believe in, but not hundreds of people who were persecuted. And the church was built on the foundations, martyrdom of the apostles, and the blood of the martyrs. That was the foundation of our church. We are a group of people who are standing on the shoulders of the martyred witnesses. Marteo means witness, and that's what 1 John 1:1-4 is about. We witness from what was from the beginning. We know that Jesus is true. So who is this Jesus? Is Philippians 2:6. Philippians chapter 2 talks a lot about who Jesus is, who, being the very form of God, did not consider equality with God. He emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant. See, taking the form of a bondservant, he was free. He was the only free God man that we could ever know, ever see. But he emptied himself taking the form of a bond servant. What is a bond servant? A bond servant is someone who has been set free in Roman times. There were a lot of slaves, and there's a lot of shows, Netflix shows like Spartacus, Gladiator is also a very important movie. During the Roman Empire, there's Roman soldiers, and there's also a slave class, and well, very famous movie Gladiator. The main character has to be sold as a slave, and then he works his way up to the gladiator, and they fight. And the gladiators were slaves who could earn their freedom if they win. So a bond servant is a free slave. He's free, completely free, but he submits himself to the master again because he loves his master and he wants to be a bond servant. It's a willing action to lay down his own life. So Christ did not have to do that. He's God, but he willingly took on flesh. That's the incarnation, and he emptied himself. This is kenosis. He emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant. And a side note here, we believe that he had emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, being made in likeness of men. Likeness is the key word here. He is not like us. He is like us 100%, but he is still God. Jesus is still God. We cannot compare. There's something that we need to know, that he is God. Jesus is God. And he is also man. 100%, fully God, fully man. So many heresies come out of touching Jesus' divinity and humanity. He was perfect. I think he's the only one who is perfectly 100% divine. He is divine. His divinity is God. And he is also human. He's both and. Only man who is that way. Not Adam, no prophet. They were all men. Their likeness of us were like the men, but he is God. No one other. He's the only God, man. Fully God, fully man. But he made himself a bondservant, and he was made in likeness of men. He took on flesh. He emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, and became obedient to the point of death. Imagine that. He who cannot die comes on this earth, taking the form of a man, likeness of man. He empties himself to the point of a bond servant, right? And the picture I see is Jesus on the Last Supper, serves, he welcomes everyone to the table, and officiates over the Last Supper, explains what this is, explains this is my body broken for you, this is my blood shed for you. With the breaking of the bread and also the passing of the wine, and that symbolizes the wine press, where when grapes have to be squeezed, and then the blood symbolizing the wine is shed from the grapes, and it's like this grape going through a grinder, right? Or in the wine press where they would step on the grapes, and the grapes would blister, and they would squeeze out the juice, and that juice becomes wine when it becomes fermented, right? And that was what Jesus was referring to when he passed out, that he would have to be squashed and he would have to be persecuted, and that is true when he is whipped before the cross, right? All his blood is shed, and everything, every blood and water, single drop of blood and water, they're all empty from him when the Roman soldier spears his side. And yeah, he was obedient to the point of death. And he emptied himself to become a servant, right? I remember that Passover night when he would lay down, take off his clothes, on the top clothes, the outer garments, and he wrap a towel around his waist like a servant. A servant would do that. Servant would wash the feet of servant will wash the feet of a master. He did that to his own disciples to teach them, this is what you must do. And after that, he became obedient to the point of death. Think about that. You create something and you swoop down and you wash their feet. In any culture, washing the feet is not something an honorary, a dignitary does. It doesn't matter what kind of custom you have, culture you have. Washing the feet is something for a lower class person. Someone who is below you in standing in honor. And no one who is above, no God in any religion does this. Only Jesus Christ, only Christianity has this maker become a bond servant, taking the form of a bond servant. No other religion also has God die for its own creation. Obedient to the point of death. Obedient to the point of death. Being found in appearance as a man, Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death. Guess what? Even death on a cross. And I want to focus on this as our Christocentric perspective. Because he humbled himself, he emptied himself, humble, empty, lowered himself to a bondservant, slave. Because he did that, God saw this, gave him life again, gave him the name that is above all names, Son of the Most High. And because Jesus was exalted by God, from the lowest place, he goes to the highest place. He was already high. He was already in the highest. He was with God in the beginning, right? He was from everlasting to everlasting. He is the beginning and he is Alpha and Omega. He is God. From the highest place came to the lowest place. Now God exalts him to the highest place again. And even all authority on earth and in heaven given to the Son. And Psalm 2, it talks about a rod that would destroy the nations who rise up to him in pride. In Psalm 2, it talks about this rod. The power, all the power on heaven and earth that is given to Jesus Christ. Psalm 2 is the coronation psalm, talking about Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who has the rod that would shatter the nations as if this metal rod that would break all the clay pots of the potter. Jesus has held this power ever since his ascension. His ascension from earth to heaven, seated at the right hand of the Father, ruling. He has had this power to do so, and yet, what does he do? He does not lash out, act out. He is patient, loving kindness. And what does he do? Even with that all power, he's humble. He loves us so much. He loves the world, even though it's sinful, even though it's evil. He loves us. He loves the world. He loves us. He does not use his power, so that he waits and waits and waits, he's patient, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee would bow, every tongue would confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. This is what we're teaching. This is what we're teaching. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And this is God's image. He taught us. Christ taught. Christ taught the fall of man. Christ, the person of Christ is very important to know. Christian education is very important. Christ taught the apostles one thing, to love one another. To love one another. He taught love. If we want to summarize Christ's teaching into one word, is love. Love. To love God. All your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That sums up all of the commandments. Love people sums up all of the commandments. Loving God with everything that you have, and loving people with everything that you have. That sums up Christ's teaching. And with this idea, we went to the East. Talked about religious education in the East. In Indonesia, greatest democracy, talked about religious education of Islam. Malaysia as well. Israel, Jewish education. Modern Russia, Orthodox Christianity. Buddhism. China, religious faith of the Chinese. Then Korea. And then today, we come to religious education in the West. And we're going to cover European Union, United Kingdom, and the United States. And Christianity is one of the cultural and ethical cornerstones of Europe, especially Europe and the West. We believe that Christianity began from the apostles, as we read from Jesus, the apostles, blood of the martyrs, to using the platform of God is amazing in his usage of Spirit inspires these authors who are fluent in the Greek language, and the New Testament is written mostly in Greek, pretty much, if not all in Greek New Testament. And in Greek, because of Hellenization, Roman Empire did come and they spoke Latin, but most of all in the Mediterranean known world, the philosophy and the language franca, lingua franca, which is the Frank language, the common tongue, was Greek, just as we speak English now. The English was the common tongue of that day. Philosophy, Greek philosophy, was something that governed the thoughts of thinkers that day. So Christianity is the cultural, ethical cornerstone foundation of Europe. So in Europe and the West, so I include European Union, countries of Europe, and United Kingdom and United States, because I believe that if we know about the culture, religious education, and the Christian, Judeo-Christian background of these cultures, if we realize this, then we can know about the religious education in the West. And I talked about how Christian faith began. Education has to be talked about the teacher and the students and how it was spread. We can know that Apostle Paul plays a huge role in Christian education, and basically we can know that Jesus Christ is the teacher, and Apostle Paul is the apostle that sets up the foundation, the philosophy, adds to the longevity of Christian teaching. What Paul does is because he takes the gospel, he makes the most important decision that influences the outcome of the marriage between Greco-Roman philosophy with Christianity, because the gospel does not go to the east, but it goes to the west from Jerusalem. And that calling, we know, is called Macedonian call. Acts 16. The background is Paul's second missionary journey, his call to Macedonia. Acts 16, 1, 18. This call to Macedonia, Paul is, he has always wanted to go to Asia. He has always wanted to take his faith to the east. And yet, something changed him. What was that? Is the Macedonian call. Second missionary journey, he takes the gospel all the way to Asia Minor. That was modern day Turkey. And he takes the gospel to the west. And his idea was to take the gospel to the end of the earth. And because with this Macedonian call, with the leading of the Spirit, right, this change, or this pull away from to the east to the west, this greatly impacts the outcome of what we're going to talk about today. So in Acts 16, 6-10, this is what it says. Paul and his companions traveled throughout the region of Phrygia and Galatia. Phrygia, Galatia is, if you see, is in, if you look at, and there's Antioch, Pisidia, Ephesus, Troas. You see all these cities in his second missionary journey, and his idea was to take the gospel to the province of Asia. So, having been kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia, when they came to the border of Mysia, they tried to enter Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to. Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit himself, would not allow them to go east. So they passed by Mysia and went down to Troas. So verse 9, during the night, Paul had a vision. So during the night, after just trying to go east. So if you see, there's Antioch, Pisidia, Lystra, Ephesus, Troas. You see Troas there. And Troas is right there. You see the Black Sea on the map. Below that is the city. You see the route. You see Troas, right? Because they could not go, they tried to go east. If you see above Troas, there's Mysia. So he says, Paul and his companions traveled throughout the region of Phrygia, Galatia. Phrygia is right where Antioch is. If you see Antioch, there's two Antiochs. There's Antioch above Syria, and just follow me, Tarsus, Derbe, Lystra, Iconium. There's another Antioch, right? There's Pisidia, Phrygia, right there. Galatia on top. They tried to go further. Galatia, they remained there. And being kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia, They came to the border of Mysia. You see Mysia, you see the arrow, Bithynia, Mysia, and then Troas. So they came to the border of Mysia. They tried to enter Bithynia. Look at that. Bithynia is east of Mysia. They tried to go east. They tried to go, well, if you see east, is that east? They tried to go east to Bithynia, but they were stopped. And they had to go west. So they went to Troas because they couldn't go to Bithynia. They could not enter because, what does it say? The Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to go there. The Spirit of Jesus did not allow them to go east. The Spirit of Jesus, what they did was take them to Mysia again and down to Troas. But during the night, Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia standing and begging him, come over to Macedonia and help us. So after Paul, he had seen the vision, we got ready at once to leave for Macedonia, concluding that God has called us to preach the gospel to them. This Macedonian man appeared in Paul's vision after trying to go to Bithynia, trying to go to Mysia, border of Mysia, trying to go east. But what happened was Paul was given this vision of a man, Macedonian man, standing and begging him, come over to Macedonia. Did Paul know who Macedonian men were? Maybe not. How they dressed? Maybe not, but they did say, come over to Macedonia and help us. So when Paul saw the vision, they got ready at once to leave for Macedonia, concluding that Jesus had called them to preach the gospel to Macedonia. This important call, Macedonian call, projects the gospel to the west this way. And that is how the gospel goes around the globe toward the west. And Christianity became known as the religion of the West. It's a Western religion, although it did start from the Middle East. And this call is so important in its history, its Christian, its implications in Christian history, so that European religion, if you see, there's a lot of flags that have 3 colors, 3 stripes. So Germany has 3 colors in their flags. France has 3 colors. Belgium has 3 colors. And divided into 3 rectangles. All those are flags. All those colors of the flags, they represent the Trinity. 3 in 1. That idea of Christianity being so fundamental, Christianity being the cultural, ethical cornerstones of Europe, that happened because of the Macedonian call. Europe would still be a pagan continent if Christianity did not come to the West. If it went to the East, it would have been totally different. So this Macedonian call was what it is God orchestrating history of Christianity. Christianity, cultural, ethical cornerstones of Europe. Macedonian call has to do with everything. And today we're going to go over all the nations of European Union. Not all of it. We're not going to have time to cover all the nations. We're going to cover the United Kingdom, its history, its introduction history, some of its policies. So the European Union is made up of many different European countries, and some countries are added, some are out of the European Union, such as Brexit is huge, right? Great Britain or United Kingdom exiting So today we have a separate section to cover for United Kingdom. There is officially in the European Union no overarching policy on religious education in the school system, public school system. Every country is different. The authors use a idea, some authors of religious textbooks, they use the idea, especially in Christian religion, this methodology, comparing, analyzing different religions across Western Europe or Europe, countries in relation to different aspects of religious education. I'm gonna, in fact, cover other nations too, but some Eastern European nations too. But what we're gonna see today is Western Europe. So pretty much of Germany, west of Germany is, we call that kind of Western Europe, and east of Germany is Eastern Europe, just because it was divided with the Iron Curtain. Even Berlin was divided into East and West Berlin. And we know that Germany was the epicenter of the Cold War, because after World War II, the Americans and the Allied nations came from the West, and the Russian Red Army came from the East, and they met in Berlin. They divided Berlin in half, and all the Eastern European countries they became annexed to the Russian communist USSR at that time, Soviet Union. In Western Europe, we're going to try to cover these countries: Germany, Austria, Belgium, France, Ireland, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Ireland, very interesting. Not part of the United Kingdom. United Kingdom only has Northern Ireland. Ireland is independent. So this religious freedom for all is clearly established in these constitutions of these countries. Obvious differences are revealed in legal positions or attitude toward these religious education. For example, legal framework of this education has been included constitutions of the analyzed countries, except the case of France. Also, optional subjects are in offer in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. However, no alternative subjects to religious education are on offer in Austria. In the sense, there needs to be some academic dialogue between these countries, because every country is different in its religious education. But that's kind of the background, this idea. There is of course, no Soviet Union. The history of European Union is that all these countries are, NATO is a big deal. NATO is a like military kind of alliance that was created to halt Soviet aggression. Now that kind of shows in European Union when they financially united. So all that basically, this is the European Union as we see today. Financially, there's Euro. All these nations are part of the European Union, and with United Kingdom backing up Brexit, that was a huge deal. And the policies, these religious education in European Union, in order to fully comprehend these European Union culture, it's necessary to take the account pillars which have gradually formed in this over time. including religion. Europe, far from being like a homogenized society, is made up of diverse communities whose histories of religion and religious education is so deep, so buried, so it's so varied, so diverse. So without expounding on this complex history of the current situation, it should be highlighted that if we are to fully examine and understand the phenomenon, we need a suitable historical cultural perspective, which goes beyond our competence and understanding. So there's so much history, there's so much ideas of religion and religious education, so we can't cover it all. But for centuries, Christianity permeated and radically influenced European society in art, language, laws, morality, music, politics, and family life. Christianity deeply influenced European culture, so it's part of European culture. They say, okay, European, no, they're not Christians anymore. There's less Christians than ever. Christianity in Europe is dead, so on and so forth. But you cannot deny Christian influences in its society, art, language, laws, morality, music, politics, family life, even in European way of thinking. In this regard, history of Europe cannot be understood without taking into account the advent of Christianity, its subsequent expansion, and the religious conflicts of 15th, 17th centuries, which is basically the Reformation. Up until 15th century, Catholicism was Christian religion. And then came the Reformation, Protestantism came. So this religious education in schools has been greatly affected by changing relationships between church and state in the 19th century. So this idea of separation of church and state being a little bit separate from the church governance, that happened very late, not so far away. So it only happened in the last 200 years. So the balance established between state and society brought about a concept of secular state where religion was limited to private sphere. This was not the case, never the case. So, however, both fields were clearly outlined in the 20th century. The state took on subsidiary role in society where freedom covered the religious aspects of teaching. The religious neutrality of the state was respected. Parents could choose the religious education of their children. In fact, after World War II, Western Europe protection was guaranteed for human rights. Secular nature of education was blurred, and the tendency to grant parents the right to educate their children freely according to personal religious beliefs, that was protected. This meant that religion moved beyond the private spheres of state schools, although not in France, where compulsory state education continues to be totally, it turns out to be secular. So what that's saying is war has changed us, society has changed in pretty much late 19th, 18th century. So changes did not really happen only recently that changes happened. So a couple of things. The Consultative Assembly of the Council of Europe, dedicated to religion and democracy, advised ministers' committee to invite governments and members of state to promote and develop religious education, establishing specific suggestions. These suggestions are the following. I'm going to read them out. The religious education becomes a means for promoting a set of values that allow younger generations the space for reflection, understanding within democratic ethical education. Second, to encourage education in all world religions, analyzing them comparatively and eventually identifying their main ideals. Also, to encourage the study of religion, not only in compulsory education and among children, but as part of actions research at a university level. Lastly, to attempt to prevent quandaries caused by belief of children's parents and religious educations established by the state in order to ensure respect of the freedom to decide by families. So, European Union had these suggestions. So, controversies and discrepancies arose when attempts were made to define the major role played in the past and at present by Christianity in the European Union. When drafting the Constitutional Treaty of EU, the mere inclusion in its preamble of an expression mentioning Christian roots of European societies, it divided the countries. 12 countries defended its inclusion: Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Spain, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Lithuania, Malta, Netherlands, Poland, and Portugal. All countries which were Catholic or mostly Catholic they defended its conclusion. Its inclusion was finally ruled out due to the rejection from Belgium, Cyprus, Denmark, Slovenia, Estonia, Finland, France, Greece, and Latvia, who claimed this could jeopardize possible European secular identity, despite the fact that this statement was simply the expression of an undeniable historical fact, which is considered politically inconvenient. So, because Cyprus, Denmark, Slovenia, Estonia, Finland, France, Greece, and Latvia, they claimed that this was politically incorrect, this was ruled out. European Constitution, European Union, includes in its Article 274 the right to free compulsory education, the liberty to set up educational centers, and to guarantee parents and their children will be educated and taught in line with their religious beliefs. Freedom of education, thus associated with religious freedom. Nevertheless, differences to be examined later became apparent when comparing the German version of the European Constitution, which does refer to religious values of the EU, to the official version in which French stance speaks only of spiritual values. The rejection of the Constitutional Treaty by some countries brought about a constitutional crisis in the EU, which finally ended with the ratification implementation of the Lipson Treaty, modifying the European Union Treaty and the Constitutive Treaty of the European Community. The aspect of religion was modified with the inclusion in the preamble of the following text: drawing inspiration from the culture, religion, religious humanist inheritance of Europe, for which have developed universal values Europe. So these difficulties of a common policy within European Union is highlighted, observing difference in treatment given to religion, constitution of each member country. This basically caused rifts between European nations to set up a constitution that governs all of the EU. Within the EU, just this idea of having a Christian background, France, Catholic background, all these nations have a Christian background, and yet they were disagreeing over to say that or not. So given this ongoing difficulty, adopting a common stance on religion, this study is very difficult. Examine the current differences, similarities of the situation in Germany, Austria, Belgium, France, Ireland, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. We have to look at the constitutional legal framework, ascertain how far the rights of application of parents educating their children extend, as well as the freedom to choose religious education, RE, in state schools, and safeguarding the proposed RE curriculums and textbooks. For this purpose, comparative methodology education had to be used in many studies. So this kind of study, the result is common policy highlighted after little differences, treatment to give religion, constituents member of country. Basically, each country has its right to own religious freedom when applicable to the religious education taught in primary and secondary school level. So each country had a different system, and that was honored for, I guess, everyone in the European Union. And I'm gonna try to, at this time, I'm gonna try to go over all these countries, their history, and hopefully we'll be able to so constitution, education and rights. Germany right now, state and education, constitution. State, in the constitution, it basically guarantees freedom of education. It remains loyal to the constitution, article 5 and 3. Educational system under the supervision of the state, article 7 and 1, European Union. State and religion, those in charge of the child's education have the right to decide on religious education. Those in child's education, so parents, have the right to decide on children's education. This type of teaching takes the form of an ordinary subject in state schools, except in secular school, Article 7, 2 and 3. Religious education in schools attended to by the church or religious community in charge. The state is responsible for the management and supervision of education. Germany, Germany is a country known for many things. It's known for also Reformation. Martin Luther, German reformer. But Germany is one of the most influential Western Europe country. Very deep history, 2,000 years history, deep history. Berlin as its capital, home to it's home to the population of Germany is 83 million, so home to 83 million Germans. Germany is the official name of Germany is Federal Republic of Germany. It's a country, I'm going to say Western Europe, but it's pretty much the center of Europe. It's the second most populous country in Europe after Russia. The most populous member of the European Union. So Germany is situated between Baltic North Seas. It neighbors the borders of Poland, Czech Republic, Austria, Switzerland, France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And it borders also Denmark to the north. So right now, population of 83 million Germans. Financial centers, Frankfurt, the capital, largest cities, Berlin. And history of German is they were Germanic tribes, and region named Germania occurs in AD 100. This is almost 2,000 years ago. German territories formed central part of the Holy Roman Empire. Very Catholic, deep Catholic roots until the Reformation. During the 16th century, northern German regions became the center of Protestant Reformation. Following Napoleonic Wars, the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806, the German Confederation was formed in 1815, 1871. Germany became nation state when most of the German states unified under Prussian-dominated empire after World War I. German Revolution 1918-1919. Empire was replaced by semi-presidential Weimar Republic. Nazis secured power 1933, established the Third Reich. After World War II, Germany was divided into Allied occupation, West Germany, East Germany by Soviet Union. German Democratic Republic. Public government was a communist Eastern Bloc state member of the Warsaw Pact. After the fall of communism, German reunification saw the former East Germany states join the Federal Republic of Germany. This became 1990. This is the fall of Berlin Wall. Germany, major power in Europe, if not the greatest power in Europe. European Union. Germany has the world's fourth largest economy just by GDP, fifth largest by PPP. Global leader in several industrial and scientific technological sectors. Both the world's third largest explorer and importer of goods. Developed country, which ranks very high on the Human Development Index. United Nations, NATO, G7, G20, OECD, has the third largest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Again, Germanic tribes and Frankish Empire, East Francia, Holy Roman Empire, pretty much this history. Gutenberg, also from Germany. Luther, also from Germany. German Confederation and then Empire. After German Empire, Weimar Republic gave way to Nazi Germany, and East-West Germany. Allied Germany divided into four parts. American, Soviet, British, French occupation zones, and so French controlled certain parts, Americans controlled certain parts, British controlled certain parts, and Soviet Union controlled Germany. So after Nazi Germany surrendered, the Allies partitioned Berlin and Germany's remaining territory into four occupation zones, Western sectors, and United Kingdom, United States, France. They merged 1949 to form the Federal Republic of Germany. In Germany's Bundesrepublik Deutschland. So 1949, Soviet zone became German Democratic Republic. They formerly was known as West Germany, East Germany. And they reunified in 1990. European Union came after the United Germany, considered the enlarged continuation of West Germany, so it retained membership in the international organization. Since its reunification, Germany taken a more active role in the European Union, EU, signing the treaty, Lisbon Treaty, and co-founding the Eurozone. Germany sent a peacekeeping force to the Balkans, and with Angela Merkel, 2005, becoming the first female chancellor, and basically Germany becomes the political, economical powerhouse of Europe. Known for music, literature, philosophy, Um, but religious education, the parents, backed by the Constitution, the parents have the right to decide on religious education. So this type of teaching takes the form of ordinary subject to state schools, except secular schools, religious education schools attended to by the church or religious community in charge. So the state is responsible for management, supervision of education, and the parents are responsible for religious education of their child. We're going to look at Austria, Germany, neighboring country, Germany, Austria. Austria, the federation is in charge of the legislation and execution of schooling, Article 14.1. In state and religion, all minors have to be open to political, religious, ideological thought in order to take part in the cultural, economic life of Austria, Europe, and the world, as well as common missions of peace and love of peace. Interesting. Education described as neutral, implying respect for philosophical, ideological, religious beliefs of parents and students. Very interesting. Austria is a country that also was part of it's called European Union of Austria. So officially Republic of Austria. It's center of everything. It doesn't have a port, so it's in the center of Europe, located in the Eastern Alps, composed of 9 federal states, one of which is Vienna, Austria's capital and largest city. Austria is bordered by Germany to the northwest, Czech Republic to the north, Slovakia to the northeast, Hungary, Slovenia, Italy, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein to the west. Austria occupies area of 32,000 square miles and is a home to nearly 9 million people. While German is the country's official language, they speak German. Austrians commute informally with Bavarian dialects. Again, capital city is Vienna. Some recognized languages, they have different kinds of languages. Religion, compared to Germany, which had in its religion mostly for Germany, mostly no religion is about 40%, Roman Catholicism 27%, Protestant 24%, so quarter, about 25% Protestant, 27% Catholic, and for Austria, 60%, over 60% is Catholic, or actually 69% Christianity, 57% Catholicism, 80% is Orthodoxy, 3.3% of the Christian, 22% no religion, 7.9% is Islam, 1.1% is other languages. Austria, it emerged as a nation around 1976, And in 16th century, Austria started serving as the heart of the Habsburg monarchy, a junior branch of the House of Habsburg. The most influential royal dynasties in history. As a archduke, he was a major component and administrative center of Holy Roman Empire. Early 19th century, Austria established its own empire, which became great power and the leading force of the German Confederation, but pursued its own course independently of the other German states, knowing its defeat in the Austro-Prussian War 1866. Compromise with Hungary, the Austria-Hungary dual monarchy was established. So Austria was involved in World War I under Emperor Franz Joseph, following the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the presumptive successor to the Austro-Hungarian throne. After the defeat and the dissolution of the monarchy, the Republic of German Austria was proclaimed to be empowering with the intent of union with Germany, but the Allied powers did not support the new state. Remained unrecognized in 1919. First, Austrian Republic became the legal successor of Austria. 1938, Austrian-born Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of German Reich, achieved this annexation of Austria in the Anschluss following the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945. The extended period of Allied occupation, Austria was re-established as a sovereign, self-governing democratic nation known as the Second Republic. Austria is parliamentary, has a parliament, has a president, head of state as chancellor, head of federal government. The major urban areas include Vienna, Graz, Linz, Salzburg, and Innsbruck. Austria consistently ranked top 20 richest countries in the world by GDP. Country has achieved high standard of living, ranked 20 in the world's most human development index. Vienna, it ranks top internationally on quality of life indicators. The history in the Middle Ages, the Bavarian Slavs and Charlemagne, king of the Franks, conquered this area, this territory, 17th, 18th centuries. Leopold first, it was the main leader. 19th century, involved in wars, and 20th century, this idea of the Austrian Empire, and World War II was part of the history as well. So very historically important country, and the religious education was actually very interesting. The state, common mission, European idea. This Austria emphasizes on peace and love of peace. This needs to be educated in the Constitution. Very interesting. Belgium, another interesting country. In Belgium, the state education guarantees the enjoyment of rights and freedoms, categorically determining the freedom of education and the prohibition of any measures preventing or hindering it. Students' compulsory school age is learns the right to moral and religious education. State schools offer in obligatory schools. Schooling, it offers this the chance to choose between the teaching of a specific recognized religion or a secular moral education. France is non-divisible, secular, democratic, and compared to Belgium is a little bit different. So students compulsory school age with the right to moral education, they have this right, Article 24.3. State schools offer obligatory schooling, the chance to choose between the teaching of a specific recognized religion or secular moral education. Belgium, right next to Germany. Belgium, if you see in the picture, I had the map of Germany there, so that was my mistake, but Belgium is officially the Kingdom of Belgium. There is a king. Um, the monarch is Philippe, King Philippe. The official name, again, Kingdom of Belgium, is a country in West Europe bordered by Netherlands to the north, Germany to the east, Luxembourg to the southeast, France to the southwest, North Sea to the northwest. Population of more than 11.5 million people. Its religion conducted in 2019, Christianity 60%, heavily Roman Catholicism. Other religions 6%, no religions 31%, Islam is 7%, and 2% are other religion. History of Belgium: it's a sovereign state with a federal constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system. So its institutional organization is complex, structured on both regional and linguistic grounds, divided into highly autonomous regions. Flanders in the north, and Bologna in the south, and Brussels, capital region. Brussels is the smallest and most densely populated region, as well as the richest region in terms of GDP and capita. Belgium is home to two main linguistic communities: Dutch-speaking Flemish community, which constitute about 60% of the population, and French-speaking community, which constitute about 40% of the population. Small German-speaking community, numbering around 1%, exists in the East cantons. The Brussels capital region officially bilingual German, French, and Dutch, although French is the dominant language of Belgium. The linguistic diversity related political conflicts are reflected in complex systems of governments made up of 6 different governments. The country as it exists today was established following the 1830 Belgian Revolution, which is when it seceded from the Netherlands, which had itself only existed 1815. The name chosen for the new state is the Latin word, derived from the Latin word Belgium, which used in Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars to describe a nearby region, period of 55 BC. Belgium is part of an area known as the Low Countries, historically somewhat larger region than the Benelux groups of states. So in the northern France, so it's a French-speaking Belgium and the Dutch-speaking northern part. So its history in the antiquity, mentioned in the Gallic Wars of Julius Caesar, Middle Ages, during the 5th century area came under the rule of Frankish Merovingian kings, who are probably first established what is known as northern France. France came to be ruled by the Carolingian dynasty, which centered power was around the area known as Eastern Belgium. Frankish kingdom had been divided up in many ways, but Treaty of Verdun in 843 divided the Carolingian Empire into 3 kingdoms, whose borders had a lasting impact on medieval political boundaries. Most of modern Belgium was in the Middle Kingdom, known as Lotharingia, but the coastal county of Flanders, west of the Scheldt, became part of the West Francia and the predecessor of France. In 1873, Treaty of Mercy, modern Belgium lands all became part of the Western Kingdom for a period. The Treaty of Rijnmond, Lotharingia returned a lasting control of the Holy Roman Empire, whose lordship, bishoprics among the March. This kind of complicated this as well. Burgundian and Habsburg Netherlands, that complicated its history as well. Spanish and Austrian Netherlands, the French Revolution Kingdom of Netherlands, independent Belgium came 1830. Belgian Revolution led to the separation of southern provinces from the Netherlands and to the establishment of a Catholic and bourgeois, officially French-speaking, neutral, independent Belgium under a provisional government and a national congress. So German independence came, Belgian independence came from the Netherlands, but it was French-speaking, heavily Catholic influence. So Catholicism is what is majority religion in this state. Finally, we come to the European Union country of France. It's not, there's more countries in European Union, it's not the final country, but in France, the law determines the main principles of education. France is a non-divisible, secular, democratic, and social republic. So Republic of France is a president, which guarantees equality in the eyes of the law for all citizens, regardless of origin, race, or religion, respecting all beliefs. State recognizes that public worship is due to Almighty God. The state shall reverence His name. That's what the other republics refer to, and yet France is non-divisible, secular, democratic, social republic. It's secular. France, as you know, deep history. One of the most, pretty much the powerful countries in Europe. It's officially known as the French Republic. Is a transcontinental country spanning Western Europe, overseas regions, territories in the Americas and the Atlantic, Pacific, Indian Oceans. Very influential country. France is a unitary semi-presidential republic with its capital Paris, the country's largest city and main cultural commercial center is Lyon, Marseille, Toulouse, Bordeaux, and Lille and Nice. Capital city is Paris. Religion, about 58% Christianity, and 31% is no religion, 8.3% is Islam, with a population of about 67 million. This very ancient nations, France was settled by Celtic tribes before. Rome annexed the area as Gaul in 51 BC, leading to a Gallo-Roman culture, which was the foundation of the French Empire, or French country, France, French language as well. The Germanic Franks formed the kingdom of Francia, which became the heartland of the Carolingian Empire. France retains centuries-long statutes as a global center of arts and science, philosophy, so on and so forth. History, prehistory, antiquity, as you know, and then early Middle Ages. The Franks embraced the Christian Gallo-Roman culture, and their ancient Gaul was eventually renamed Francia, or land of the Franks. The Germanic Franks adopted Roman languages and Germanic languages, so on and so forth. Joan of Arc led French army several important victories in the 100 Years' War. Early modern period, French Renaissance, very important. Monarchy peaked during Louis XIV. Palace of Versailles was a center of power. Revolutionary France, 1789, 1799, where the French Revolution occurred. Ever since then, France has been a republic, Napoleon, 19th century, 1799, 1914, this Napoleonic Empire, and the contemporary period is 1914 to the present. Um, and both wars, World War I, World War II, fought in France in that European area. So France is very interesting in its religious history and country's history. It was one of the countries that did not want Christianity or religion hindered the European Union. Ireland, we come to Ireland. I don't have that here right now, I'm just going to read it out. The state must ensure children schooling age receive basic education, respecting the educational wishes of parents. The family is recognized as the primary natural educating agent, respecting the right, obligation of parents is to take charge, religious, modern, intellectual, physical, and social education of their children. The state provides free primary education, makes effort, complement to private initiatives. State recognizes that public worship is due to Almighty God. State shall reverence His name, respecting, honoring religion. State funding will not discriminate against schools managed by religious confessions. Students are not obliged to attend religious education classes taught in these centers. The state contributes with educational facilities or centers, especially in regards to religious and moral education. Ireland, very interesting because Ireland is divided into Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Ireland, its capital city is Dublin. Full name Republic of Ireland. It's a country in northwestern Europe. Religion is 85.1% Christianity, so 78% of that is Roman Catholic, and about 2.6%, 4.6 is other Christian. So one of Europe's major financial hubs in Ireland is Dublin, Ireland. Ireland ranks among the top 10 wealthiest countries in the world in terms of GDP. Its history is very complicated. This home rule movement that secured independence from the United Kingdom. This Irish Civil War, Constitution of Ireland, very complicated history of this religious conflict as well, Roman Catholic, Irish, and Protestant, Church of England, United Kingdom. We don't have time to go into that, but Ireland makes sure state contributes with educational facilities, and even in its constitution, the state recognizes public worship is due to Almighty God. The state shall reverence His name and respecting and honoring religion. So state, very religious. Luxembourg, the state must ensure that all Luxembourgers receive primary education, which will be obligatory and free, where religion, the freedom of worship, and its public exercise, as well as the freedom to manifest religious opinions, are guaranteed. Education is a subject of constant, I'm going to go to the Netherlands, subject of constant attention from the government. It's executed freely, yet it may be supervised. Teachers will have to pass ability and morality exam. All municipalities provide basic public education. State education regulated by law, respecting religion or individual convictions. So in the Netherlands, freedom of religion is guaranteed. where there's a separation between church and state. The society is becoming increasingly secular, but the demand of RE, religion, is increasing. So most countries, it's possible to find schools governed by public authorities as well as private ones, which are mostly religious. But our religious education, part of the Dutch education system, differences can be found in depending types of educational establishment. For instance, state schools, secular, aim to educate on different beliefs. At the same time, private schools are authorized to teach their religion beliefs as a compulsory part of the education curriculum. This case study programs and textbooks are chosen by the individual religious confession and subsequently approved by educational authorities. For Luxembourg, in Luxembourg, there is no strict separation between church and religion, state and religion. Constitution accepts that religious communities carry out an important public role. Although Luxembourg has 68% Catholic, the population in 2008, it should be noted 24%, about 25 do not profess any religion. So, regards to freedom, religion, conscience to the children, with the exception of the schooling, the law on organization, primary education, and moral education should become field of learning for second, third, fourth years. Obligatory and can be assessed, but it offered to the parents mostly. For France, actually, let me cover Ireland first. I don't have one on the slide, but Ireland, 1937 Constitution reflects Roman Catholic social educational thinking of the Irish people. Most of Irish people are 80% is Catholic. It defends the right to parents to RE, the role of state guarantor is right. Although there is no religion officially recognized by the state, most citizens are Roman Catholics. The vast majority of Irish primary schools are under control of religious communities. Private education is recognized, but confessional schools are not necessarily part of the sector. Primary education, 90% of schools are both national or state confessional Christian, as they both profess Christian education ideas, usually Catholic, and are under the supervision of local committees where the church almost always is at a parish level, has predominant representation. These schools are, of course, fully funded by the state, resulting in a major degree of state control, albeit with a considerable leeway for autonomy, even as regards of hiring teaching staff. In no case are excluding confessional. That is to say, they cannot reject students on religious grounds. Pre-primary ages 4 to 6, non-compulsory primary education 6 to 7 compulsory. There are 30 minutes daily of RE, religious instruction, education. This is taught as a compulsory subject in secondary education. Very, very important. In France, considering 2010, 64% of French citizens declared themselves to be Catholic, while 28% claim not to profess any religion. So it might be deduced country is predominantly Catholic. However, there is long been strict separation between church and state, with the French very proud of this separation. Currently, state schools are secular, religion is excluded from their classrooms. Furthermore, 2004, following this intense debate, applying principle of secularism to regulate the wearing of signs, clothing, manifesting religious affiliation in state schools, lower secondary schools were passed, prohibiting the public display of religious symbols in state schools. No student can claim political religious conviction when appealing to a teacher in relation to the right to study a part of the program. It is forbidden to appeal to religious beliefs when rejecting the rules applicable in schools in the Republic. Nevertheless, school calendar is specified to study program sets aside half-day week in primary education so that different religions can teach RE outside school. Exceptionally, RE is part of the school curriculum in the regions of Alsace and Lorraine, which conserve their traditional agreement to the Vatican. Attempts are currently being made to gradually negotiate the application of secularism in both regions. So very secular separation of church and state. For Belgium, endless religious conflicts in school pact was signed in Belgium 1959, guarantees teaching of religion and moral, although there is no official state religion. So no official state religion, but still religious education is taught. In Austria, despite institutional organizational separation of Austria between church and state, there is no reciprocal cooperation between both sides as regards religious education. So due to the number of students who do not request religious education, some schools incorporated alternative subject of ethics, just like other secular nations. Germany, this type of education recognized RE. RE is provided state private schools and is included in curricula for primary and secondary education, presented as a optional subject but with academic effects. This is very important. According to the Bremen Clause, RE is voluntary and the responsibility of the church, except in states of Bremen, Berlin, and Brandenburg, which legislation predating the basic law. German education system offers alternate subjects to RE. Their naming and content depend on individual states. These optional subjects, philosophy, ethics, values, norms, free study. So very optional, you can choose. So these are pretty much the European nations that we talked about. Other nations that I have not mentioned, Latvia, Italy, Finland, Romania. I have not mentioned these. If we do have time next week, I'll try to mention them. Czech Republic, Estonia, Slovenia, Portugal, Poland, Spain, Latvia, Italy, Finland, Romania, so on and so forth. We do not have time today to talk about United Kingdom, very important. I'll probably address this next week, and the United States as well. Christianity goes from Europe and United Kingdom to United States, and from American missionaries comes to the East, Korea, and so on and so forth. So gospel moves to the west, to the east. Very important religious education. Next week, we're going to try to cover what we didn't finish today. I'll end the class today here. And then we're going to talk about practical